Good evening, Joe. How are you going?
Hi, Bede. Good, thanks. And you?
Good. Now, what we're going to continue on is we're going to continue on and we're going to talk about the reality that wisdom, if it is wisdom, gives you a new mind. Okay?
Yep.
And this is very important because we have a tendency to be stuck in our views of things. So what happens is that throughout our whole life, we've built up ideas about ourselves. We've built up ideas about other people. We've built up ideas about the world. We've built up ideas about God, or that there is a God, there's no God. We're full of ideas. And with these ideas, we look at life. So we don't look at life, and it is not life, by the way. We look at our ideas about life, and our ideas transmute themselves into experience. Okay, so if I say Joe's an idiot, I'm not aware that I'm having a thought that Joe's an idiot. I'm having an experience of Joe as an idiot. So my way of seeing is my experience. So my thought that I'm having when I look at Joe is projected as experience. So I'm not seeing what's in front of me. I'm seeing my thoughts projected.
Right. So my way of looking at the world, and that informs my experience, is derived from the way I see.
Exactly.
Mm.
In fact, you can say that whenever you look, your experience is a mirror telling you how you're seeing.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. That's
Okay,
an interesting way to look at it. Yeah.
always.
Mm.
And the thing is that we're enclosed in it because we are seeing it, it's there. It's like when we're looking at a snake instead of a rope. We really believe we what happens is a thought pops up, there's a snake there, and I'm then now seeing a snake. Dayananda called that because I'm seeing it, it's there.
So you wouldn't say, because I think I'm seeing it, I think it's there? No.
No, you don't. You're not even
No.
aware that you're thinking of it. You don't. You're not
Okay.
aware that you're suffering from a delusion.
Right. And you would also not say, because I think of it a certain way, even though I don't know I'm thinking of it a certain way, that's what makes me believe it's there.
I'd say that what happens is something happens in front of you. There's an automatic reaction in terms of what you're seeing, based
Yeah.
on what you believe and all of the thoughts you've had and
Right.
all of
Yep.
the past experiences that you've had. And then suddenly you're looking at what you think you're looking at what's in front of you,
Yep. Got it.
but you're not.
Yeah. It's
So
not the reality.
yeah, like have you, for example, when you're talking to people and they're talking about their problems, they just know what the problem is. I know what the problem is that I'm upset because of what this person has done to me.
Yeah.
Now that's a way of seeing, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a whole lot of assumptions, but it's a way of seeing. Yeah.
But you don't see the assumptions. You're having an
No,
experience. As far as
exactly.
you're completely convinced as to your ability to comprehend the world as it is.
You're almost immersed in those perceptions and assumptions, aren't you?
Yes, I wouldn't call them
That way of
perceptions. I'd you're immersed in subjectivity.
subjectivity. Hmm.
Yeah, because when you actually perceive something or be aware of something, it's quite different.
Right.
Okay, so but your cognition, how we talked about the three main aspects of an individual: their heart, their cognition, and their conduct.
Yep.
So when we start on the spiritual journey, we're just full of ourselves, as Dayananda says. We're not full of
Mm.
reality.
Mm.
And our self manifests as a way of seeing.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I hear you heading in the direction that reality is actually quite different.
Reality is because it's there, you see it. But this is because I see it, I'm there. So this is our ordinary mind, which is notional. You notice how I'm seeing a snake. The problem is notional. It's not actually, there's no snake there. There's actually a rope, but I'm having a notion or a belief that there's a snake in the corner. And as far as I'm concerned, that is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm convinced. The magnificent thing about this subjectivity, when it gets, because it constantly comes into operation. I look at myself and I go, oh my God, can't stand myself. You know what I mean? That is a notion. And I'm taking myself to be this idiot.
Mm-hmm.
Even the idea that I'm an idiot is a notion.
Yeah.
And then I go, oh my God, what can I do about this? I know what I'll do. I'll become a better version of myself. So then now I've got the notion that I, this ignorant person, can become a better notion of myself. So then I try to become something better.
Good luck.
Yes. So what happens is when I look at myself, subjectivity comes into operation and I have a certain experience of myself. I look at other people's, subjectivity comes into operation and I have a certain experience of other people. I look at the world and again, I have what subjectivity comes into operation as an experience. I don't see the subjectivity.
No.
I'm seeing my experience, which appears to be in front of me, but it's like what the Buddhists say, I'm in a room full of mirrors thinking I'm looking out.
Yeah. It's like we're a projector of our inner states, but we don't see what's projecting. We just see what's on the screen outside of us and respond to that.
That's a very good way of putting it, Joe. Yeah, that's a joy. And this is the condition of human beings. They are living, what Dayananda says, that they're living in themselves. They're not objective. Right? So, and this is my normal mind. This is my normal mind. And what this does is that I'm constantly confronted with what seems to be, it's a seeming. It seems that there's a rope in the corner. It seems that I'm an idiot. It seems that I'm a wonderful human being. It seems that life is just completely horrible. So what's happening is the subjectivity is entirely unconscious and it churns out an experience that you're conscious of. But this experience is not living in the world as it is, not living in reality. And Plato in our tradition was the first one to really talk about what seems to be as opposed to what really is. When in the presence of wisdom, we see what really is, as opposed to what seems to be.
Okay, yeah.
So the moment I actually see, oh my goodness, there's only a rope in the corner, what happens to the experience of a snake?
Yeah, it goes away.
It just disappears.
Yeah.
It's the way he puts it, it's resolved into reality. How he talks about that is you resolve the ego into reality. But what happens is, so you can see, can't you, that some people try to start the spiritual life by doing things. I'm gonna become better. I'm gonna be a nicer person. But the first port of call is I have to see what's really going on. Otherwise, I'm in darkness. And the strange thing about subjectivity is we don't see the darkness. We are convinced that we're seeing reality. If you talk to people, why are you upset? Oh, I'm upset because of what that person said to me. What really is that I've got a notion about how a craving that I want the world to be in a certain way and I want people to relate to me in a certain way. And when they don't, I experience a tremendous dejection. So the basic problem is I'm craving for a sense of security and happiness from an experience in the external world called people talking to me in a respectful way.
Right.
But I don't see that. All I'm aware of, I'm not aware of myself. I'm not aware of what's going on with me. I'm not aware that the problem is entirely with me, because I have a very convincing experience that that person has insulted me and they deserve punishment.
Right. So we're projecting a certain expectation of how the world should relate to us. And we don't even see that that's what we're doing.
Well, it's more than an expectation. We can, we can expect the world to be exactly as we want it, but but we're definitely craving, desiring, cherishing, valuing certain experiences in order to make us happy.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt about that.
No, I can relate to that. Yep.
Yeah, and it's based on the false notion that external things cause me to be happy and external things cause me to be unhappy. That's a very convincing delusion.
Sure.
I suffer from it every day, actually, Joe.
Oh, so do I.
So wisdom is the beginning of the spiritual life.
Mm-hmm.
Because without wisdom, see, Dayananda says, when you're enclosed in subjectivity, not even God can help you. Of course it can't, because there's no reality.
Mm.
So the seeing of reality dissolves or makes the experience just drop away. So when I am seeing the rope, the mind that sees reality is an entirely different mind than the one that's filled with subjectivity. The mind that's filled with reality is vastly different.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't get from one to the other. You can't go, okay, I'll improve my subjectivity in order to become real. Not possible.
No, because tinkering with subjectivity is also subjectivity, right?
Yes. It's like when someone does a bad act and then they go, oh, I'm so terrible, I'm so horrible, I shouldn't have done that, oh, I'm no good. That self-condemnation is more self-involvement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's me wanting to be a better version of myself.
Yeah, God, I hate that expression. I just hate it. Yeah. What if I want to become an enlightened human being? Now, that can be. The thing is that within our heart there is an innate aspiration that loves truth and loves goodness. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and in our tradition, beauty as well. Because you notice that when you meet a good person, there's a certain beauty about that, isn't there?
Yeah,
right.
Very much so.
So, but that's not. So we actually have an appetite for reality inside.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if we didn't have that appetite or that desire for moksha, for freedom, and so when we look at our minds, one of the first things is that you have got this world, right? This world. And this world is basically a dramatization of subjectivity.
Mm-hmm.
And the underlying boiling aspect of this subjectivity is cravings, hatreds, and fears. Even though we gloss it over with being nice and we present a face of innocence and all of this sort of stuff, in subjectivity, what fuels it, what's continually driving it, is our cravings, our hatreds, and our fears.
Mm-hmm.
We can see this, and when someone's, Have you ever had the experience where you've wanted to attack someone back, give them a serve?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Hatred. That's what
Especially
hatred
on the road.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Have you ever had the experience of fear?
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. And the thing is that so when we're talking about subjectivity, we are talking about a form of cognition, of seeing. The problem is that it doesn't show us what really is. It's presenting to us what seems to be.
So these give us rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, or even really pessimistic glasses. For Dayananda, both views are wrong. So I can have a notion of myself. I am such a wonderful, good person, so intelligent, and I'm very, very good. And my mind, and it's so easy in subjectivity. Have you ever sometimes wondered that the world's completely mad, but you, of course, aren't?
Yeah. That's when everybody disagrees with me.
Yeah.
And they're all wrong.
That's right. We're all caught in.
Or stupid.
Yeah. And the thing about subjectivity is that you feel you're right. So you think that your mind is actually in good condition. You totally believe that you're seeing reality the way it is, right? So you've got a certainty as to your seeing, and you also think you're a good person often. Okay, and you think that you are this good notion of yourself, and you take comfort in it, and it's precious to you. And when someone dares challenge it and says, really, you may be a bit of a jerk, or you may be selfish or self-centered. How dare you call me self-centered, right?
Yeah, it's very selfish of them to do that, really.
It is. But what's hurt? Am I hurt? No. But my cherished picture of myself is hurt. And that's the real meaning why I'm upset. Because when I feel that I am this good, nice person, I have the experience of being happy and content. But it's fakery. It's just delusion. But it's very convincing as an experience. I'm actually pretty good. I'm actually a pretty together, confident person. Do you know what I mean? I look around me and I see people who aren't very together, right? Okay. So this subjectivity is what we're enclosed in. The only thing that frees us from subjectivity is wisdom. The seeing of what really is. So wisdom is not accumulating ideas.
Okay.
So when I'm sitting in my subjectivity and I pick up a spiritual book and I go, oh, and I'm the self and I'm perfect and oh, I like that idea. That is that good or is that good? Right? I think, oh, really, I'm getting somewhere. The next moment I'm arguing with someone. There's no wisdom in that. Even though I've acquired notions and more ideas, they're just simply verbal. They're not. It's not a new way of seeing. It's not seeing what really is. It's just getting ideas. And the most extraordinary thing about subjectivity is it's completely invisible. When you're in it, you think you're in the world as it is. You think you're seeing straight, and you think the reason for your problem is something external to you. Which for Swami Dayananda, all of those are delusions.
So if the only remedy for subjectivity is wisdom, where do we get it and how?
Good. Now, that's a very good point. Now, this is where Vedanta comes in. And what it is that the practice of Vedanta is what they call listening. Listening. And what are you listening to? You're listening to the wisdom that's embedded within the scriptures. Now, I don't know much about Hindu scriptures, but I met a man who was an embodiment of the Hindu scriptures. So when I think of the scriptures, I think of Swami Dayananda as the scriptures in living form, the wisdom of the scriptures in living form.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now, so what happens is, here I am, I've got all of these perceptions and ideas about myself, I've got ideas about the world, and I've got ideas about other people, and I'm pretty certain that my ideas are right. Okay, so what Swami Dayananda says is, you don't know that you don't know, and you don't know you need to know.
Okay.
Right? But what happens is, after a while, you know that that appetite in our heart that has an appetite for truth and for goodness and beauty, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We
You
seem
see,
to have
goodness,
that.
beauty, and truth is God from our Western perspective. For the
Yeah.
Hindus, God is life, light, and fullness. That's what God is. So when we partake, when we're drawn into the freedom that is God, the wisdom that is God, the goodness that is God, the beauty that is God, when we're actually drawn into it through wisdom, in other words, we awaken to it, we awaken to what God is, and we appreciate his presence in our life, we change. And for Dayananda, when reality, when what really is comes into view, that is God coming into your life. When the presence of reality, what really is, it comes into your life, that is God coming into your life.
Okay. How's that? Can you talk more to that?
Okay. When you suddenly realize that you're skiting, that you know you're subtly bragging, presenting yourself, so that, and there's something in you that looks at it, and something in your heart grieves because you know it's fake.
Sure.
That seeing the truth is the presence of God in the form of a new way of seeing that has nothing to do with your cravings, your hatreds, and your fears, does it?
You mean when I see that it's fake?
Yep.
That seeing? You're talking about
That
that
seeing,
seeing?
yes.
Particular? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
God's
Yeah. I've
always
often
knocking.
experienced it. I've often experienced that when you're engaged in something that you just don't, you just kind of know underneath, almost unconsciously, that it's not quite right. It's not quite
Yeah.
there. It's not quite true.
Yeah.
Mm.
And what happens is you notice your little dishonesties and all of that stuff, and you sort of keep them at a distance, right? But something
You
nags
don't want
at
to
you.
see it too clearly, do you?
Sorry? What?
You don't normally want to see it too clearly. My subjective self doesn't want to see it clearly.
Yes. And
Doesn't want to
Dayananda
allow that to be there. Yeah.
Dayananda gave a word for this self that arises out of subjectivity. He called it personality.
Okay. Right.
It's personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it has many faces. And so all of the problems that we have that are actually the great thing is this, is that the whole dream of subjectivity is broken by the introduction of reality, by seeing what really is.
Yeah, that's good. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what Swami Dayananda says is that we have a wonderful ability, and this ability is that we can suspend our judgment pending discovery.
Mm-hmm.
He actually called this faith, suspending our judgment pending discovery. So here we are, we're listening to him, or we're listening to a Vedanta teacher, we go into, we have a listening mind. So we suspend the judgment, so we're no longer preoccupied with our thoughts about ourselves, the world, or whatever. We're setting them in abeyance. Our mind is now empty and open, and now it can receive the truth. Without listening, in the sense that he means it, which with our judgment suspended, because it can be sometimes even difficult to suspend judgment, because if you're not really interested in seeing the truth, you won't value listening, for example. But once it becomes a fact to you that, what opens my door to me here is this ability to listen to the teaching, right?
Yeah.
What happens is then, you see, he had another principle. He says you can only be aware of what you know. Okay? You can only be aware of what you know. So if I know, because one of the things he says is that the problem is centered on me. If when I'm in an argument with you, I suddenly become aware that, wait a minute, so that what happens is the wisdom comes alive in me and says to me, wait a minute, it's not Joe. This problem is centered on your mind and heart. Your mind's preoccupied, your heart's disturbed. That's where the problem is, and that's what has to be resolved. And that is not an external problem. If I can't be aware of that fact unless I know about that, unless I know that the problem is always centered on me. Can I?
Yeah, true.
So this is how knowledge gives me a new mind. I now have an entirely different way of seeing. So here I am. I'm caught up and angry with you because I can forget the wisdom that's come alive in me. Have you noticed that? Right?
Sure. Okay.
But,
I imagine you can.
But so what happens is I suddenly go, it's not Joe. It's not my spouse. It's not this, that, and the other thing, external events. The problem, the upset, the misery, the pain is centered on me. Now, so through listening to the teaching, I listened to Dayananda for about 14 months, right? You just sit there and you just listen. Now, people think, well, what do you do? What do you mean? What do you mean you're just listening, right? Because what happens is he put up a word mirror where he unfolded a meaning that you could see as it exists in your life. Right? So, and what
it's like he was talking directly about your life.
He was showing me my life through the words. He presented a word
about your life in a way that you hadn't seen before.
That's right. He was presenting a word mirror in which I could see myself. So I was studying myself while I was listening to him. I wasn't learning all about Vedanta.
Right.
I was learning about my life through the Vedanta method. And the Vedanta method is actually basically showing and telling what your life is like so you see it. So that seeing, at any one moment, if I have a problem, at any one moment, if I'm upset and angry and disturbed, right? That problem is not being caused by an external event. The problem is the very upset and misery that's centered on me. And when that wisdom is alive in me, it's a very powerful thing because I stop blaming. If I just had it as an idea, if I said to you, I was listening to Dayananda the other day, Joe, and he said that the problem is located with me. It's never with external events. Oh, yeah, okay, that's fantastic. The next moment, I'm getting angry with you, right? But it's all it was I got the ideas that he was saying. There's no word mirror there. It's just getting a concept. It gets a religious concept.
So there's a kind of listening you're referring to in particular, right?
Yep.
Because I guess it's possible to listen without suspending my judgment. I'm listening and immediately responding with my previous preconceived perceptions and subjective judgments, and I'm just turning your spiel into my dialogue.
So it seems that you are listening, but what really is you're not.
Right.
You're only listening to yourself.
Yeah.
You're still listening to yourself.
Yeah. I tell myself it's listening, but really I'm just having a dialogue with myself based on
Yeah.
what you've prompted me with.
Yes.
Okay, I got it. Yeah. So you're talking about a deeper kind of listening.
I'm talking about where judgments, the usual notions that become active in me when I look at myself, when I look at other people, and I look at the world, they're held in suspension. That
Right.
creates an open mind. And then the truth of what Swami Dayananda is saying comes alive in me as as a new way of seeing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing the fact. I'm seeing what really is. It seems that Joe is upsetting me, but what really is the pain and upset centered on me. And that is the place where the problem is, the real problem, and that is the only place where the problem can be resolved.
So is there anything else that you need to do to take that in properly, like
Yes,
as it's
that's a very
intended?
good point. He said you need two things. First of all, you can see how you get a new mind when wisdom's alive in you. Can you see that?
Yes.
Because that comes from above, comes from God.
It's a whole new way of seeing,
Yep,
actually,
yep,
isn't it?
yep. So now you have to live it. So what happens is, here I am. I'm caught in thinking that you have caused my problem and I'm angry with you, right? Then suddenly the wisdom comes in and goes, it's me. And I go, oh, okay. Now I have to live that wisdom. In other words, I'm now going to look at my life in the light of the teaching. Okay, it seems like Joe is hurting me, but what does the teaching show me? So I highlight the teaching in my mind, and I ponder the truth that become evident to me when I was listening, that the problem is always centered on me, that the world doesn't give or take my happiness away, right? And as I contemplate the truth of this, it's like I'm suddenly seeing the rope. I suddenly find myself no longer blaming. Now I'm doing what he calls living the wisdom.
Okay.
Because if you don't live the wisdom, the only way that the wisdom is established in you is that here I am, I'm angry at you and I'm blaming you. And then what happens is the wisdom tells me, no, it's not Joe, it's you. Oh, okay. So suddenly I'm caught here. And then I go, yeah, but what do I do with this preoccupied mind and disturbed heart? And then the wisdom comes in. You just turn to God, the presence of God, which is here, right where your problem is, and you just remain open, and you let the presence of God's presence come into your heart and mind, and then you find yourself being lifted out of the pain. Now you're living the wisdom again, aren't you?
Right. Okay. Yep.
But you're living the wisdom. You're not doing stuff from memory or from your subjectivity.
Right.
And the only way you can establish the wisdom in you firmly is by living it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Does that make sense? So, and so what happens is that, you see, when you're caught up in an emotional state and you're upset and you're angry, Swami Dayananda says, you can't do anything about that. That is not wrong. That is just simply the result of laws. Given your background, given what's happening to you, given your knowledge and your understanding, you are as you are. Now, and they also said, the basis of self-acceptance is the understanding of Ishvara. Now, what did he mean by Ishvara? He meant reality, the presence of reality in the form of the given, right? That's where you encounter God. So right now I'm upset and angry. That's the presence of the given, isn't it?
Yep.
Now, what I can do is, if I simply remain before God as I am, without trying to change myself, but depending completely on the presence of God to transform my mind and my heart, I'm drawn out of the upset and the antagonism and the upset. My mind starts to become clear. My heart starts to become undisturbed. And I arrive at a place which he calls resting in the lap of Ishvara.
Okay.
Now, this, again, notice I'm living the wisdom. I know that if I remain as I am, and imagine God is light, and fullness, right?
Yep.
So as this light, and fullness penetrates my mind and my heart, my mind becomes clear, and of course my heart is I'm given a new life. I have a different heart, don't I? And as I'm drawn into God, into Ishvara, into living in what he calls living in Ishvara's world, living in the world of the given, what happens is I find three things happen. First of all, I'm no longer fighting you, right?
Yeah.
I'm now no longer fighting myself. I'm leaving it in God's hands to deal with, because I can't deal with it, right? So I'm not. How can an ignorant, upset person solve ignorance and upset?
Yeah, it's fighting subjectivity with subjectivity, isn't
Fantastic. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Mm.
And so I arrive at this place which he calls being relaxed in the lap of Ishvara. There's three things that become evident when you're relaxed in the lap of Ishvara. First of all, you're at peace. There's no conflict. Okay, so you're not fighting. He calls this the fighter in you disappears. That's what he used the phrase. The fighting in you disappears. The fighter in you disappears. So you're appreciating yourself as being peaceful. Now, it's not that I'm a peaceful person. The reality of God is peace itself. You don't get peace.
So you're letting go of the thing that robs you of the peace.
Yeah, and you're living in the peace that is God.
Mm.
Okay? And it's not, you didn't do anything, or you're just appreciating the peacefulness because you understand that the presence of the given is the presence of God. That means, and what's the given? I'm upset, I'm disturbed, and it's right there that you meet God. Nowhere else. You don't have to become nice, holy. I'm not holy. Right? So the fruit, the observable fruit of when you actually turn to Ishvara and you just simply let you come to him simply as you are and say, here I am. You're like a lump of clay. He's the potter. Do your thing, Ishvara, right? Do you know what I mean? So, but you remain quiet as you are, and in that surrender, what you're doing is you're resolving the ego into Ishvara. This is what he calls it. You resolve the ego. So here I'm up with the head and stuff like this. But as I become more and more awake to the presence of reality, the presence of reality is also a light, isn't it, Joe?
It's also what, sorry?
Light.
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 Yeah.
It illuminates.
Okay. It illuminates. Yeah.
As the presence of the rope becomes more evident, what happens to the snake?
Oh, it disappears because more light is going to show me what it really is.
That's exactly right. And Dayananda says if our nature was to be unhappy, we could never change. But it's not our nature. So here we are. The first fruit is that we're not fighting, so we're feeling peaceful. We're drawn into the peace that is God.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing is we're drawn into the freedom that is God. In other words, I'm in a way of being in the world that is not being caused because you are being nice to me, and it's not being caused because you're being horrible to me. It's above the opposites. So I am being free. Okay, see how I'm living the wisdom?
Yeah.
You see, he unfolded what it meant, the meaning of what it means to rest in the lap of Ishvara. And then, and lastly, which is most important, is that I'm being peaceful, I'm being free, and I'm also being at home with myself because I'm at home in God. Now this myself, in my subjectivity, I'm angry one day, happy the next, craving the next, confused the next, all of these different manifestations of it, right?
Yeah.
But the core principle is that I have an underlying self-dissatisfaction. I hate my life. I hate what I'm like. I hate it. The thing that Dayananda says, why would you seek happiness? You only seek happiness because you're unhappy.
So this is a very core thing that my view of the self that I'm seeking to be is a sort of, it's a half-baked substitute for something that I don't realize that would resolve all of that.
Yes. The self we normally want to be is a self that's away from the fear. So it's based on fear. If I can be that, I'll be happy.
Any sort of becoming project of mine,
Yeah.
like I want to become a this or a that or a better this or a less that.
Yes.
It's always going to come from me trying to do things, and
Yes.
really what it takes, what I'm hearing you say is what it takes is that I listen out more for wisdom, which actually resolves that whole thing altogether, because
Yes.
there's no longer a self to pursue that's unreal.
Yes.
There's no longer an unreal way to be self.
If I act from wisdom, I can act from wisdom. But if wisdom is not the basis of my actions, I will continue my nonsense.
Mm.
And what's really interesting is that for Dayananda, in the West, we've got all these categories of forms of human unhappiness, right? Antagonism, delusions of grandeur, denial, projection. We've got interpersonal conflicts. We've got all of these things, right? But the basis of all of them is self-dissatisfaction. I hate being what I'm like.
Mm.
But when I'm resting in the lap of Ishvara, I'm at home with myself. What happens to that self-dissatisfaction?
Yeah. It disappears.
Have you got rid of it? Have you got rid of it? Have you somehow pushed it away, or has it right here, right now, as I am, has it disappeared?
It's disappeared because it's been replaced by some other sense of self, is it?
By a new life, exactly.
A new life, yeah.
By a new life, yeah.
The new self is at peace with the self that it has.
Yeah. Well, the new life is peaceful because in our Western scriptures we have a saying by St. Paul: we become a holy offspring of God. So when we're a holy offspring of life, light, and fullness, then the thing is that, first of all, we have a new life, which is real, which is stable, which doesn't get chucked around. Light, which is awareness, and there's fullness. Now, he calls this you being a simple conscious being, a simple conscious person. So he's got a contrast: me as personality and me as simple basic person. Simple conscious person, sorry. Conscious. Why am I conscious? Because I'm filled with reality. It's not an attainment. I'm a recipient of, basically, I'm appreciating my life as the life, light, and fullness that is God. That's the Vedanta thing. They call this non-dual knowledge. When your life is the life, light, and fullness that is God, you are being free.
Right.
But it's not me and God over there. It's not me and God over there. It's non-dual knowledge. I'm being, and you'll notice that in the lap, when you're resting in the lap of Ishvara, you're first of all just simply being. And to be is to be aware, which is simply being. They have the word for being in the Hindus, they say sat. And the second part is aspect that they highlight is that being is also chit. It's also being aware and being full. this is something you can appreciate for yourself. When you're just simply being, you're also being aware and you're also being full. The fullness is the important thing in the sense that it solves a psychological problem. Because when you're full in yourself, you don't feel deficient, and then the world can't give you anything. It's the only thing, that fullness that is God is the only thing that liberates you from your compulsive binding desires, because you only love things in the world because you're trying to fill yourself up.
So would you say that what we're full with then instead is the wisdom?
No, the life. The wisdom is that the wisdom guides you to this new life.
Right. Okay.
Do you know what I mean? So God's wisdom is very, very kind. It guides you. It says, Bede, you're being a bit of an idiot here. Joe isn't the problem, it's with you. Bede, now, you know what you need to do? This problem, you can't fix it yourself. You've got a preoccupied mind and a disturbed heart. But if you place that in Ishvara's lap, you come and just simply rest in Ishvara's lap as you, the presence of Ishvara's reality will transform your mind and heart by giving you a new mind and a new heart, and then you lift it up. That's the wisdom, isn't it? Me remaining and not moving and not trying to attack you or anything like that, that's me living the wisdom, isn't it? If I don't live the wisdom, it's not going to work, is it?
Yeah.
But notice I'm living the wisdom. I'm not having a reaction about things.
Sure.
And it's conscious.
And that wisdom isn't sought for the sake of having a bag full of knowledge. Yeah.
No.
If it doesn't guide you to a new life, it's not really wisdom, I guess.
If God doesn't come alive in you as a new heart and mind, you're on the wrong track. Now, once you know what it means to rest in the lap of Ishvara, being peaceful, being free, and being full, being, at home with myself in God.
Yeah.
Now I've got a measure, because the next moment I might notice suddenly I've fallen away. You see, Swami Dayananda calls this being relaxed in the lap of Ishvara, finding your slot. Right?
Okay.
But what happens is, you know how he talks about how the practice of karma yoga is the practice of sameness?
Mm-hmm.
When you're resting in the lap, you're being a simple conscious person, aren't you? Right?
Right.
And things are happening and changing, but you're not lost in anything.
Sure.
Right? But the next moment, something happens, someone says something you don't like, circumstances aren't what you like, and you find yourself being rattled. Right? Now, this is where the wisdom comes in too. From my own perspective, I'm being rattled because the circumstances are not what I want. So my rattledness is being caused by externals. But then the wisdom comes in and goes, the meaning of your suffering is not what you think it is. The meaning of your suffering is that you're no longer resting in the lap of Ishvara. You're no longer remaining the same. Ooh. So do you see what's happened? I'm now seeing what really is, and what really is my problem is always the absence of the light, the absence of the cognition of the life, light, and fullness that is God. That is, when I'm in subjectivity, I'm living a life cognitively separated from God.
Right.
Not ontologically. You can't get away from God, but you can lose sight of God's presence, can't you?
Yep.
Again, notice how I'm looking at my life. I'm looking at, the meaning of my suffering isn't that Joe's being a jerk. The meaning of my suffering is I've fallen away from the lap. So if the meaning of my suffering is I've fallen away from the lap of Ishvara, what's the solution to my suffering?
Turn back.
Yeah. Place myself as I am, this messed up, angry, uptight person, into Ishvara and let him resolve that. let him cook me, so that because the thing about Ishvara is that he draws you into himself, into the very life, light, and fullness that he is. As that happens, you change.
Mm.
But do you notice I'm being guided by the wisdom, aren't I? Every step
Yeah.
of the way. It's not that I do nothing. I just do nothing. I'm just going to do it's nothing. It's not like that. The wisdom is actually very active, isn't it?
Right. So you're following that wisdom. You're
Yes.
not doing nothing. You're following the wisdom.
Yes.
Mm.
I'm being governed by the wisdom. So, first of all, Bede, you're being an idiot. You're upset with Joe. He's not the problem. Oh, now I'm stuck with myself. That's okay. You know what you need to do? You just need to turn to God, place yourself in his lap, and just simply wait, and he'll start. He'll be like the potter, and you're like a lump of clay, and he'll start working on you. And he'll draw you more and more into himself. Oh, in other words, I get resolved as I am, this unhappy individual, into Ishvara, what Dayananda called resolving the ego into Ishvara. Again, Dayananda unfolded the meaning, but you have to see it as it exists in your life, and then you have to live it. Does that make sense?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So the only hope here is that wisdom leads you to a new life.
Yeah.
Okay? And it all is based on the fact of what is God. See, Swami Dayananda's psychology was a God-centered psychology. For the Hindus, this life, light, and fullness that is God pervades everything. That means it pervades me as the stuffed up, angry, confused person.
Mm.
It is precisely in the presence of that given. So what this means is, what's most important is to be truthful. You don't have to become spiritual and sort of pretend that you're not something you're not. Right
Yeah.
now, I'm upset. Right now, I'm depressed. Right now, I'm confused. Right now, I want to prove myself. Right now, I'm lying. To recognize the truth, what really is spirituality. Does that make sense? Because if I want to resolve the ego into Ishvara, I have to be aware of myself as ego, don't I?
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned consciousness earlier on. Is wisdom the source of consciousness?
Comes from consciousness, because consciousness illuminates what's there.
Right.
Right. So when God's presence comes alive in you as awareness, notice how that's not notions. Awareness is not notions. Seeing the fact. What Dayananda said is this. He says, someone said to him, Swamiji, what's the meaning of life? And he said, well, the meaning of life is to live. But he says, but we need to know what living is. He says, you're only living when you're alive to facts.
Right.
Because when you're alive to facts, you're being aware, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're aware of what is. And so I have to commit to living in what he talks about, living in Ishvara's world. Dayananda believed that the presence of reality is therapeutic. He called Ishvara the best therapist. So it's therapeutic to recognize I'm upset right now. I'm angry right now. I'm bragging right now. Because you need to be aware of your situation in relation to this life, light, and fullness that's God, don't you?
Yep.
So, because otherwise, if you do the normal thing, oh, there's nothing much wrong with me, I'm pretty good, and all that stuff, and the psychological mechanisms of defense, even though I'm miserable, I can have an idea of myself. The life of subjectivity is miserable, but then it's got this trick. It pretends to be happy to get rid of the misery. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I present myself to myself. I'm pretty good. I'm a happy person. No, you're not. Right? You're only happy when you're living in reality. You can't be happy in subjectivity. Subjectivity, or in all the forms that it takes, are different forms of fear. Even the anger is a form of fear. We're afraid. We're so afraid that we want anything that'll take away that fear, to make us feel secure. We're trying to imagine trying to find security and happiness where it's not. And we hope that this book will do it, this relationship will do it, this achievement will do it, but it doesn't. It can't. The only stable point in our life is the life, light, and fullness that is God. And when we're resting in that life, light, and fullness, we find ourselves full of life, light, and fullness.
Yeah.
But this is not going to be open to us unless we come alive to wisdom and be willing to be governed by it. Is it so? For example, let's say, for example, someone said something to you that you don't like and you want to defend yourself, and you go, okay, I'm not going to defend. The very fact that you're not going to defend means that you're going to be chucked back into your fear, isn't it?
That's the usual consequence.
Can't help it. Because the activity of personality is avoiding the fear, the self-dissatisfaction in you that you are. It's avoiding the self-dissatisfaction that you are. So when you refuse to, because you live a life of Dharma, when you refuse to brag, when you even feel like bragging or saying something a little bit impressive about yourself, and you notice that you're going to say it and you go, okay, I won't, then you'll notice a little bit of uneasiness. Fantastic. Because you can resolve that uneasiness into Ishvara. You want to discover the fear underlying everything, actually, because you can then resolve yourself as that fearful person into Ishvara. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
So you're going to now use life as a self-exposure. You're going to convert your life into karma yoga, into a yogi. He says that's how you do it. And so what happens is you're not going to try and be spiritual or good. You're going to be vulnerable to what's actually true. So you're going to be open to the fact that right now I'm skiting. Right now I'm antagonistic. Right now I'm being unreasonable. Right now, you see, the other day I got served in a restaurant, not very good service, what I didn't think very good service, and I lost it. And what I did was I was righteous and I was actually unkind. And I was feeling completely right. And then suddenly I come out of it and I go, what the hell was that? And then, so what do? Do you go, oh, well, it wasn't that bad what I did? No. You have to take it in the chin, don't you? I am being unkind. I am being irrational, right? What does this do to your lovely notions of vanity about how good you are and how magnificent a person you are? What happens to those pictures of ourselves that we cherish when we actually see the truth of what we're like and how unloving and how unintelligent, the absolute antithesis to God, how unloving and unintelligent we're being?
Well, doesn't vanity shut the door on the awareness of how someone is?
It will, because if I'm full of that picture, I'll kind of notice that I've been a bit unkind, but it won't have any emotional content.
Yeah, vanity is not concerned about the truth about others.
No, it's the desirable truth that I want to have about myself that fortifies me against my self-dissatisfaction, and right. I don't want that disturbed.
And we're back at the beginning of this talk again.
Yes. So what we're talking about here is that what we need to do is be alive to facts. That is the spiritual life. But it's not negative because we know the solution to a disturbed heart and a darkened mind, which is placing ourselves as that person in the lap of Ishvara and letting the presence of reality transform ourselves, lift us out of our confused mind or preoccupied mind and lift our hearts into a new life so that we're melted, right? that is how we can live the wisdom. This is how the teaching comes alive. So our daily life becomes a spiritual practice. We're not studying about Vedanta. Dayananda said, Vedanta is you. We're studying ourselves. And we're practicing what he calls sameness, so that we remain the same in the face of the changing events. We don't get lost in reactions, and we don't get lost in mental preoccupations. We remain the same. Things are changing in front of us, but we're remaining the same. This is exercising freedom, isn't it? This is living freedom. So we get back to his other point. The whole purpose of Swami Dayananda's teaching is freedom while living. If I can remain the same, a simple conscious person in the face of changing events, pleasant and unpleasant, so they're changing, but I'm not changing with them.
Yeah.
This is what he calls yoga. Is this a hard practice? Yes.
Sure.
But it's extremely beneficial because nothing is denied. You'll see yourself getting caught up. You'll see yourself getting caught up in your vanity, but it won't worry you. You won't condemn yourself for it, because you'll just feel grateful that Ishvara has revealed what an idiot you're being, so that you can return home into the lap of Ishvara.
So it's both simple in the sort of outline. It's hard to keep doing that because we fall away from it naturally and just keep on doing that out of habit.
However, because we now have discovered let's imagine you're in this cold desert, like it's freezing and it's totally cold and uncomfortable, and you suddenly find this oasis, this warm room, and you go, oh my God, what a relief. So you're really happy. Then you get cold again, and suddenly you remember, wait a minute, I don't have to be cold. Boom. So because you've discovered the good, the summa bonum, I love that Latin word, summa bonum, the supreme good. Because you found that the supreme good is the life, light, and fullness that is God, and that when you're rooted in that, that is your only safety and security, because that's above space and time. There's no death, there's no suffering there, nothing. Once you understand that and begin, then what happens is it becomes very important to more and more root yourself into Ishvara. Live in Ishvara, what he called living in Ishvara's world, not your own world. He says, there's got to be less of you and more of Ishvara. And so this is the whole purpose of this conversation tonight. I just wanted to go over the fact that wisdom, if it's wisdom, gives you an entirely new mind. It is not a modification of subjective notions. It's not adding more ideas. It comes alive in you as a way of seeing. You're seeing what really is, and then you can act from that wisdom, and you can resolve your problems.
Right. So is Ishvara seen as the supreme good?
The very life that is Ishvara, which is life, light, and fullness, is the supreme good.
Okay.
And the great thing about the Hindu idea of God is he doesn't get pissed off with you when you do something wrong. Not like in the Christian tradition. You know what I mean?
I like that kind of God.
Yeah. He's constantly embracing you. No matter what you do on a finite level, you can never turn him into something hateful. So that he is the true resting place. He is the home that we all seek. All right?
Nice. Thanks, Bede. That's good. Yeah. Great.
All right. Thank you very much, Joe. You have a good night.
Thanks, Bede. See you next week.
Bye-bye.